Very excited to have everybody here at the Legislative Advocacy and Community Engagement meeting. So I'm just going to introduce everybody that's sitting here at the table. My name is Kate Ratner. I am the chair of the Legislative Advocacy and Community Engagement Committee. Sitting next to me on my left, I have Mrs. Katie Fabiano, who is the president of the Board of Education. On my right, I have Dr. Chanley, who is the superintendent of the schools. Ms. Allen, who is our business administrator. I have Ms. Gail DePayne, who is our vice chair of the committee and one of our board members. Ms. Usha Sharma, who is one of our new board members. Dr. Amanda Peck, who is our Jamesburg representative, and Mr. Zach Maralda, who is our director of special programs. And then I would like to especially recognize our guest this evening. We have Senator Linda Greenstein, who is here, as well as Assemblyman Wayne D'Angelo. We also will have Assemblywoman Tennille McCoy attending. She is running late from another meeting, so she should be joining us shortly. I did just want to thank you for coming today so we can discuss some of the challenges that are facing our school district, as well as, discussing ways that we can all work together to find solutions to address some of these issues, and working together in a collaborative fashion. So I guess with that said, we'll go right into the agenda. This is available on the district website if anybody is interested in walking along.
Jogging,
whatever they want. But our first item on the agenda is just a brief discussion of the state budget for this upcoming fiscal year 2025. We actually, it's perfect timing. We have Assemblywoman Tennille McCoy, who has just joined us. Again, thank you, all three of you, for being here tonight. Very much appreciated. So I just wanted to do a quick discussion about the state budget. I know we know a lot about it from a Board of Education perspective, but if there was anything that you as legislators wanted to share regarding how it can affect school districts, if there's been any updates to that nature, that would be wonderful. Senator Greenstein.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? I know those are mics over there. You can?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll do my best to speak loud. It's good to see all of you today and really appreciate being here and getting to talk a little about some of the issues. Now, Monroe Public Schools is receiving an increase in state aid of $1.1 million this year. So right now, the state aid appropriation is $12.3 million. Just in a nutshell, we had a bill that started around fiscal year 2016, which was called S2. And that was an attempt to take the problems from the School Funding Act back in 2008 and to smooth them over and make them better. And S2 was helpful to Monroe and many other towns because Monroe was in the category of underfunded under S2. And so every year since 2016, Monroe has received an increase. Now that you're at 12.3 million, you're at the maximum that you could get, and S2 is ending this year. So right now, that's the amount of money. And what we're doing there in the legislature, we're doing it in the Senate, I know we're doing it in the Assembly, we're working hard on the issue of the new school funding formula. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of work. And Senator Gopal, who chairs the Education Committee, has already started hearings, and he's going to be doing them all fall and winter to make sure that we get a lot of input. So hopefully Monroe can input on that as well. That's going to be very important to see what we can do there. Now, a very good piece of news is that this year, the three of us were able to get an additional $300,000 for Monroe as a budget appropriation. We also last year were able to get $1 million, which was used for the roof of the Applegarth School, along with other state grants that you got. So in the last couple of years, we've been able to use the budget process to get additional money for Monroe. And the 300,000 can be used for capital improvements. And that means, just as an example, if you wanted to use it toward funding a full-day kindergarten, I understand there would be capital needs for that. You can do that. That's possible. So that's a very good use of money. There are many other state grants. Monroe would get to participate, and then one of them has to do with literacy initiatives, and there are others that you may apply for and maybe have applied for, where there's some money, some opportunity for additional funds. But right now, those are some of the ways that the state budget has been helpful. Oh, and just to let you know something about myself, I'm chair of the Law and Public Safety Committee. I'm vice chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and I'm vice chair of the Energy and Environment Committee in the Senate.
Thank you.
Board members and superintendent and constituents, how are you? My name is Wayne D'Angelo. I'm on the General Assembly, and so the numbers are the same for Linda, Tennille, and I. We both, all three of us, voted on the same budget. I am chairman of Utility and Telecommunication, where I focus in running that committee. Really has nothing to do with why we're here tonight, but that's where the focus of my energy goes. And I'm vice chairman of the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, right? So the numbers are the numbers, right? And we're here tonight to kind of figure out and hear from you, hear the issues from the board on what we can do to better enhance the funding for towns like Monroe. I'm from Hamilton Township in Mercer County. That's the southern part of our district, as well as Assemblywoman McCoy. We both reside there, and we have similar issues there, right? Suburban districts getting their fair share, their fair bite at the apple. The budget is a super complex document, but doesn't necessarily have to be. So I'll kind of give you just the basics of where the budget goes. About 50 to 55% of the state's budget goes back to our approximately 600 school districts that are out there in the state of New Jersey. Not equally, not on a per capita, and for towns like Monroe, not fairly, right? We don't get our big as a bite of the apple as some of the inner cities do. About 23, 25% of that state budget goes back to the 565 municipalities that are in the state of New Jersey. And again, they're not equally on a per capita basis or based on the size. The state has their operational budgets. They have issues where when Tennille and Linda and I put in budgetary requests, like the $300,000 for this year for capital improvements here in Monroe, issues like that come out of that remainder 25%, as well as the operation of the state. And then we give about $2 to $3 billion to our state university to help subsidize the cost of their operation, to help keep tuition down for those that reside in the state that want to go to in-state schools. So look forward to hearing some things, issues of concern that we can bring back. This isn't new. This has been recurring. This has been conversations and continue to go on. Years ago, we were working on trying to figure out ways to get towns like Monroe money back. And one uniqueness that Monroe has versus other communities are sidewalks, right? To get to school, for a child to go safely to school, they need to have a sidewalk. So I believe Monroe still is 100% busing. If I'm not mistaken, years ago it was. I'm not sure if you're still at that point, but years ago you were 100% busing, and it was a big financial burden, and we're trying to figure out ways that we could adapt. Look at it, and as we bring legislative initiatives to the state, recognize we wish we can just go, here it is, and we're going to present this and have it passed. There's 80 members on the General Assembly, and 40 in the Senate, and we need to get the majority to concur. The focus kind of goes to those that are chair of the education, both in the Senate and the Assembly, on how to push legislation, on how we can kind of get that initiative forward. So look forward to some good dialogue and some good ideas.
Thank you. Assemblywoman McCoy, anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you. So good evening, everyone, and I see some new faces on the school board, so welcome. Really excited to have the opportunity to work with each and every one of you and to our constituents here in Monroe. I'm Tennille McCoy. I'm your Assemblywoman here in the 14th District, and I'm actually your new Assemblywoman. So I was sworn in on January 8th. Also, like Wayne said, I am from Hamilton Township. And I sit on telecommunications, state and local government, and appropriations committees. So during my time, when I've had discussions with many of you in Monroe, I've always said that education was at the top of my agenda. I would mention the stories about my father who owned his own business, Sam McCoy. My mom would go off to work, and my dad would make us get the newspaper off the porch. And during breakfast, we would have to read the newspaper and we had to underline those words that we didn't know. And those would be our spelling words for the week. So education is something that's always at the top of my agenda and making sure that we are working very closely with each and every one of you. Like Wayne and Linda said, it's really important to be able to have these conversations and to be able to partner with you, to be able to have an understanding of your current needs and future needs as well. And so as we talk about that school funding formula, it is one of those things that has been a very difficult conversation for some years now. And as we know, there are some various factors that go into that school funding formula within the district, whether it is the student's needs, the wealth of the district, or the student's enrollment. And so one of the things I'm really interested in is the A3578, which will be a school funding task force. And I think that's going to be really important for us to be able to have input and have a better understanding of evaluating and recommending those particular improvements for our schools. So I'm looking forward to the conversation and hearing a little bit more from each and every one of you as far as some of the things that you can hear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think just based on what you have shared with us, we did have these packets put together. I want to thank Mr. Meralda for collating the folders, as well as Dr. Shanley and Ms. Allen for their efforts in putting this together. We have the historical state aid history that was offered to Monroe since the SFRA was put in 2008. The font is very small, so I do apologize for that. But, you know, I do think that it is a noticeable change that we have seen an increase in funding, which, you know, thanks to prior boards, we were able to get. I think that is definitely, you know, something that has come out that has been positive over the last 7 or 8 years since S2 was put into place. I also did want to share the state aid comparison charts that we had made, which sort of give a little picture as to some of our surrounding districts. And these are other suburban districts that, you know, are similar in terms of what we consider our district factor group, even though that's something that actually has not been looked at, I believe, since 2000, I think was the last time they were established, the district factor groups. But even with the enactment of S2, we are still receiving less aid per student than a lot of our surrounding districts. Like East Brunswick, this year they received $4,758. Edison is $5,630. I don't, you know, they're all here, but Monroe, on the other hand, this year, while it certainly is an increase, which is appreciated, we are receiving $1,755. So I think while there has been progress, we still have a ways to go. And I think the other thing that we've really seen is the difference in the equalization aid, which I don't know if Dr. Shanley or Ms. Allen would like to speak on a little bit more, but this past year, as in all of the years preceding this, Monroe has not received any equalization aid. East Brunswick received $26 million. South Brunswick, which has been dealing with, you know, their own funding crisis, they even received, you know, $6.45 million. So I don't know if there's anything regarding this that either of you would like to add.
No, it is what it is.
But I think that that's really something when we're looking at a school funding task force. Perhaps we need to look at really starting from the bottom and looking at how we're funding our schools overall. Because I think the formula is confusing for everybody. We actually, the New Jersey School Board Association Business Administrator did put together this fantastic article about understanding New Jersey school state aid funding, which I felt was a better detailed analysis of how it works compared to a lot of other things I've seen. But it's also very confusing, even for people, who have been looking at this in detail for, a few years, several years. And so I know that now there's a lot more talk about the school funding formula because of the districts that have been dealing with their funding losses. And so they've been very vocal. I think there's about 140 districts that have been dealing with this over the last 7 or 8 years. But I think what we all need to see together is that there are these districts that have been dealing with this for much longer. And so I think definitely there's the bills, it's 4003 and S1986, which are those task force. If that is something that can be made a priority, I think that's very important. Senator Greenstein.
Okay, now, I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible.
Sure.
I just spent the past few days trying to really learn the terminology and understand it completely. When you look at all the towns in the 14th district, I have a table here. There are only 2 towns that did not receive equalization aid. One of them is Cranberry and one of them is Monroe. And it has to do with 2 other definitions and numbers that exist. One of them is called the adequacy budget and one of them is called local share. And if you look at those 2 towns, the local, and I'll define them in a minute.
Sure.
The local share for for Cranberry is, to use a round number, 27 million, and their adequacy budget is 11 million. So their local share, which means what they could afford to pay ostensibly, is greater than the adequacy budget. And that's the same thing with Monroe. On Monroe, they have 162 million for local share and 116 million for adequacy. All the other towns, the numbers are reversed. So the way I would put this is, number one, we may hate the school funding formula. We may think changes could be made and they should be made, no question. But what's more important is when you see these numbers, they're actually not incomprehensible. They come right out of the school funding formula. So they're actually not all that hard to understand because I understand them now. But we want to have changes, but we have to start by understanding the number. So you have to look at the adequacy budget, which means what you need to have a thorough and efficient education, the local share, what they think you can afford, they being whoever's doing the formula.
Let's say, who's they?
They is people who develop the formula and what they think can be afforded by the different towns. There's no question that is one of the areas changes can and should be made. We need to look at it very closely and see what we can do to see if there's a way to get these numbers to flip.
Right.
But if you look, that's the reason why Monroe gets what it gets. It's not mysterious. And when you have that way of looking at the numbers, those 2 towns are the only 2 that got 0 in equalization aid.
Right.
And that's a very simple definition of it. Now we have to move toward what we can do to have the formula change.
Right.
One thing I want to throw in that I think is important to mention, I'll just say it briefly, and we tried to do this years ago. I think the way that Monroe is unique is because you have 50% senior citizens. And we feel that, and we tried this about 2013, we put in a bill to deal with this. And it took the Senate president twisting everybody's arms on the committee, on the budget committee, to get people to vote for it. They did not want to vote for it because it didn't help their towns. But we got it through because he twisted arms. But then when it came to it being on the floor, he wasn't going to twist arms. People did not want to vote for it. It only helped about 5 towns in the state. They would have voted for it. We just couldn't get it through. So my thinking is to try to push to have that made part of the new school funding formula. That would really help Monroe.
I would be curious to revisit that actually, considering I feel like the senior population has increased in New Jersey overall. You see communities popping up everywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
So I would be interested to see if and how, that would be effective.
Effective in other towns now, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be some others, and maybe that would be something we could try as a bill. But I'm thinking that trying to get it to be part of the new school funding formula would be a way to go.
And what I'm hoping, there was actually two things that from what you had mentioned. The first thing that you had mentioned was regarding thorough and efficient education. And this is actually something that, I sit on the New Jersey School Board Legislative Committee, which actually Assemblywoman McCoy was at our last meeting, so she may have heard this discussion. But about what is a thorough and efficient education, like what is that definition? You can't really find it anywhere. Like, I'm sure that it must exist somewhere, but, full day kindergarten, if you ask most educational professionals, they would consider that should be part of a thorough and efficient education, but it's not. And that's one of the reasons why we've had trouble putting that into our district,
Well, it came from the courts, it's constitutional, it's the Abbott versus Burke and the whole group of court decisions. They talked about it, whether they were defined it in there, I can't remember.
Right. And that's what I feel like when a new formula is discussed, to ensure that there is that thorough and efficient education, I feel like it's important that educators are able to say, like, these are things that students now in 2024 need as part of a thorough and efficient education. The other issue that we've had, specific in Monroe is because we can't provide full day kindergarten, which we're actually one of only 8 districts in the state. Upper Freehold Regional, there was 9 in Upper Freehold Regional, got it on July 22nd, 2 days ago. So when I was putting together, I removed them from our list. But because we don't have full day kindergarten, there have been these grants that have been provided across the state for preschool, which I included an application for, which is, from the Department of Education. However, one of the things in order to apply for that additional money, which is millions of dollars per year, is you need to have full day kindergarten. So we have surrounding districts, our sending district, Jamesburg, has universal preschool. So kids that are age 3 there are given full day preschool when they turn 3. And they end up in the same high school as Monroe students who aren't given full day education until 1st grade.
There are grants for the preschool, but not for the kindergarten. But now that you got this 300,000, you can use it as a jumping off point to do the kindergarten.
It's nowhere close. It financially would not, 300,000 wouldn't even come close to what we would need to have a full day kindergarten program.
Because I think it's really staff.
And facilities alone, we had tremendous growth. I've been here 22 years and we've had tremendous growth. Fortunately, we do see the growth coming down, but all that means is that we're now going to be at levels that we should have been at rather than busting at the seams. So full day kindergarten is only consideration. One of the other things that I know is a constant point of conversation is, the cap. You can't go up 2%, then, we are very proud of being above a thorough and efficient education. Nobody wants to be average. And I'm sure that everybody in our community loves the fact that our children have incredible programs, incredible opportunities. Our children are very successful, even those that go the vocational route, not just the secondary education route. Our students go to fabulous schools. We utilize, Middlesex County. A lot of our students go there as well. But when we start having these conversations, if we have any issues and we don't know what it's going to be, we're starting to look at projections. If we are above 2% and we have to start making it, we don't like to use the word cuts, but that's what it is. It's cuts to personnel, it's cuts to programs. So we can't even look at putting in full day kindergarten until we make sure that we have what we have for our children.
I just have 2 very quick questions. I don't want to. 2 things. I did get an estimate from our Office of Legislative Services, and this is nothing but an estimate. You would know better how much it would cost for you to put in the full day kindergarten, and it wasn't as much as I thought it was going to be, but you would know better. But this 300 would at least be a start. I mean, but you would have to have other money in order to.
No, it wouldn't be close. We just had conversations just briefly, and it was in the millions of dollars range because our buildings you can't just put in full-day kindergarten. You have to have the prerequisites, and, Director of Facilities isn't here, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but after having the meeting with him and having the meeting with Dr. Lehman and Miss Allen, the conversation was what buildings are appropriately fitted. You have to have bathrooms in the rooms. You know, we don't have the facilities currently now. We have children still being taught on a stage as a classroom. So we're not in any way, 300,000 would probably be the cost of the salaries for a year or two.
What's the number that we would be looking at?
For kindergarten children, I don't know off the top of my head. Do we have it written down? Yeah, that,
We can get that to
yeah,
you.
it was several $1 million though, as far as when we had the meeting.
If I could just ask you, the district, a couple of questions. One is, out of the 7,000 kids, how many are in the high school?
2,600 and, well, top of 2,650, I'm just estimating.
About 27.
Yeah, 2,600 and change.
How many middle schools?
We have one middle school with 17, just shy, 16, I should have the exact, yeah, about 1,700. I think it's 1,689. Yeah.
In the elementary, how many schools were there?
6.
6, and roughly each of them.
Oh, each of them, Woodland off the top of my head, well, Woodland's 200, oh, you have it in front of you? Oh, you got to add together. Well, Woodland's 275, Oak Tree's 585, Mill Lake, I think was, the last time it was 565, like I said, I'm doing off the top of my head.
Right.
Barkley Brook, I want to say was, 275, they were 390. Applegarth and, Oak Tree, I knew was 585, 565, and then Applegarth was the last one, I want to say there were 400 and change. 400 and change.
This.
Like I said, I'm just doing off the top of my head.
Yeah, just ballpark. So with the
We're
elementary,
just shy of 7,000 children.
just so I get a better idea, do you have like, is there an AM and a PM, or you just have?
Kindergarten is AM and PM, that's
AM
correct.
and PM, okay, so you're, and then, okay.
And we started looking at what we could utilize. So just give you an example. So the Mill Lake Elementary School has what we call the Mill Lake Annex. And for years, it was utilized as actual classrooms because we were in desperate need of classrooms, we were busting everywhere. So now, because we were able to have that down slope and we made there was some movements and there was some redistricting some years back. So we were able to now say, okay, we sat down, we had a meeting about this. So, Mr. Tague, Dr. Lehman, myself, Ms. Allen, we sat down and said, okay, we're gonna take the Mill Lake Annex, we're gonna not have the preschool anymore. We're not gonna have the equivalent of wraparound pay, and we're gonna make it our kindergarten. So, okay, so we think we're okay on the Mill Lake side. Okay, we're good. So now we look at Barkley Brook. Barkley Brook, and these are just rough numbers. So this is going back before me. I'm still a principal, so I want to say 6 years ago, I think they did an estimate to add on to Barkley Brook, which would have to have an addition to have full-day kindergarten with the appropriate bathrooms, following the hallway, following all the rules. Back then, it was like $2 million. Back then. So I don't want to say it was 6 years ago. It was definitely at least 3. It was at least 4 years ago. So approximately 6 years ago. So that's Barkley Brook. That's the other school. Then we go to Oak Tree. So Oak Tree at one time was up to almost 900 children. Now we're down to 500 and change, just below 600. We would be able to look at the kindergarten classrooms because, if you have 4 rooms, you have 4 rooms, right? Because then they become full-time and then you need 4 more rooms. So then we started saying, okay, what would the cost be to do what we need to do? Because we would now, some of the children that were taken off of the stage and put into classrooms and taken off of the cart would be put back on the stage and put back on the cart if we wanted to secure those classrooms. So we did have this conversation. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't want to misspeak. I wish Mr. Tague was here. But if I remember correctly, I want to say it was close to $15 million. And that was all in. That was salaries, looking what we needed to do with the classrooms, making sure every classroom had the proper toilets that are a necessity, looking at what we needed to do for the 3 buildings.
One of the things I think, sorry to talk loud, trying to talk loud so everyone can hear me. One of the things I think, once this task force gets moving forward, the state unfortunately does the one size fits all, right? So when the education committees are sitting there and they're having this discussion, what would be strongly advisable to deliver to them is like, hey, listen, we realize that, we're half-day kindergarten now, but it's not just taking the same teacher and then, just having them stay all day. You don't have the physical room, right? And we would need this kind of space and this apparatus, and this is what the cost would be in order for us to do this, right? And there'll be a lot of people that would be saying, yeah, but they can just, just have the kids go all day, and you have the same teacher all day. the arguments will come in like that, believe it or not. The arguments will come in like that. So it'll help us, they say, listen, this is why we need this, because schools can't handle the people that are there now. And for us to build and make sure that we have the bathrooms in the kindergarten class and everything, all the apparatus to go with it, as we're checking off things to fix. That would be one thing that I recommend that we strongly and get towns like you, similar situations to say the same thing.
Right.
The age of the schools is important, right? So as we're arguing, and saying we need more resources, roofs don't last forever, windows don't last forever, locker rooms don't last forever. And I'll just argue, I can say that, I graduated from Steiner High School in Hamilton Township in 1983. It's the same locker room, right? And it was, rusty lockers then, right? So simple things like that. I understand the frustration that you have, because, I see sometimes where the money goes.
Right.
And, I'm a very simple person, right? As I look at things, you just give it to me really simply so I can digest it. I don't want to lose it in the formula, right? The formula is really complex. I heard a story of a municipality, small town down in South Jersey, who had a billionaire move in, and it destroyed their whole school funding formula where I think they owed money, right? So, and that's part of the formula, and it shouldn't be, right? So these are things we have to, fix, because it's that one size fits all that doesn't work.
And I think you bring up a good point about the infrastructure. And, I think one of the other issues we've had here is, for many years, we did have a huge population increase, which really, overcrowded our schools we had a referendum years and years ago to build the school that we're in right now. By the time it opened, it was already overcrowded. And, since then, we've had several different boards who have tried to pass referendums, but because of the local fair share, and because Monroe taxpayers already feel burdened, it's hard for them to say, okay, well, I'll give you more money, even though they do prioritize education. And so, Ms. Allen had given us the numbers for each of the grade levels. So our high school, the exact number is at 2,625 students. Our middle school is at 1,722, and at the elementary school level, it's 2,220. But at this high school, without giving you an exact number, because I don't want to misspeak, but we're, almost 1,000 students approximately over capacity of where we're supposed to be, and so that's just another one of the issues that we've been, dealing with. And then when you look at some of the money that's coming from the state to some of these other districts, as you mentioned, they get fully funded for some of these new schools, whereas they already have programs that we can't even dream to have right now because we don't have the room for everybody that's here. Impact fees have been something that have come up often, which, this committee actually has discussed, putting a resolution in front of New Jersey School Board Association to then present to the legislature. But, one thing that when we were writing this, we learned is there actually are impact fees in New Jersey, but they only include roads, sewers, and water supplies. They don't include education. So, we're fortunate that now our numbers are starting to go down a little bit, but at the same time, if we are presented with that problem again, or if other districts, because I know you need support from your fellow legislators, if you wanted to look at something to help in the future, should something like that occur, that might be something to revisit, include schools in the impact fees. And that way, hopefully we don't, we can't go back and fix what happened, but maybe we can fix that for the future.
We've had bills in for 20 years or more than that, about impact fees. And I looked it up today. There is one from Senator Turner. She's had the bill all those years. I used to be a sponsor with her, other people did. I was asking a few people about impact fees who are they run the budget in New Jersey, and they said to me, what is that? I didn't even know. And I said, well, maybe it's an old idea, but it's one that hasn't happened yet. So I think we should look at that again.
Yes.
Definitely.
Other states do it.
Right, yeah,
Florida
majority
does
of them.
Florida
do.
does it, and
A lot of people do.
they wind up getting schools built by the builders. The builders make their money, but that's okay. They make their money, but they give us a school. and it's quite different.
Like, we also looked at, data, I know you guys mentioned Jamesburg with full day kindergarten. And then there obviously being collapsed with the Monroe students who do not have full day kindergarten. Have we done a comparison to see if there's any concerns of just the, looking at education
From
wise,
students,
how they're performing?
I don't think, because once they're in the high school, they're all Monroe students, so I don't think that we separate and look at the
So we have to set
differences.
performance, okay.
And it's such a small percentage of children also, so I don't know, the validity wouldn't be there because you wouldn't have the right control group and because you're talking about a handful in comparison to the amount of students that we have there.
Mr.
So how many students in regards to coming into Monroe full day kindergarten? Well,
So Jamesburg, they only give us approximately 60 children, 60 to 80, I should say.
Monroe.
Oh, I'm sorry, what do you mean?
We have, so it's kind of hard to give that number because
She's asking.
so how many kindergarten students would we have?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Because we do have the half-day kindergarten, so like I can share that last year we had 304 students in kindergarten. However, there are, I have 3 children, my youngest is going into kindergarten this upcoming year. I know of lots of people who do send their child to a private kindergarten
full-time.
because they need that, that they want that full-day structure. So, I would assume that if we looked at the first grade numbers, which I can get for you, I think it was like.
We
this
have them.
Upcoming year, oh yeah, okay. That would probably be around the same amounts, give or take what we would be seeing in our kindergarten numbers. But
It's 377.
I mean, this is just like, part of the problem that we get, and it's not just here. Charter schools have been like kind of a thorn in the side,
Yeah.
right? So, like recently, and it's not necessarily here, but I recently got, in Hamilton, listen, well, hit education that, okay, we gotta pay the charter school, the school district gotta pay them X amount of money per kid.
Yes.
Start scratching your head, like, I'm not a proponent of that. There's things that happen, that I wish didn't happen. Back, when Christie was governor, they did the 2% cap.
Is there any conversation about that, Kate?
Level of government, right? And to me, the school board is the school board, and, if I had a wand, I would say, here you go, it's all you, right? On you, right? If you talk to the taxpayers and, the caps is something that, I wasn't, 100% supportive of back then, and it's just something between the deals that were made to pass other legislation and things that would drive you crazy.
Right. And even more crazy when you see bills like this year where
I get it.
it was removed for certain districts only.
Is there any conversation about that, Cap? Because it really, so just to give an example, so in
People
our,
are talking about it.
in our district, we want to keep the best education we can, and we want to keep the best teachers we can. And we're not as high paid our teachers as some districts. If we do our numbers, which we're going to be doing everything very early this year, we'll be done by September in projections, and we are over what we are allowed to go out for, including any waivers we may get or anything that we can do. And we have to sit down and we have to make decisions. The recommendations are on me. Of course, I work with the business administrator and the assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction, but we have to make decisions where the cuts are coming from. Even if we make it work and we go down some teams in the middle school, we get rid of some positions that are not required because we have above the thorough and efficient of what's required. We have a parent in every kindergarten class. We have a media specialist in every school. We have a nurse in every school. Those are not requirements in all the buildings. Even if we did our due diligence and we said to the taxpayer, we hear you, and the board makes the decision not to go out for another question, and we do those cuts, and we're still okay, it never ends. We wind up ruining our district because the following year, you have the same problem. And the following year, you have the same problem. So you would think that the state, because New Jersey has got such a fabulous education, we're so highly rated, you would think, we are hopeful because you speak for us. I mean, I live here, so you definitely speak for me. The bottom line is we would like you to say this 2%'s got to go, because then we can have some comfort level, still being, still being respectful of our taxpayer. I'm one of them, still being respectful of the money we spend, still looking for creative ways. But we are so in such a bind because every year, if we had to do that and we had to cut programs or cut personnel, eventually we'll be below the third efficient. I guess we'll be getting equalization aid because that's what will happen.
But let me ask-
One of the things, like, again, as for the public too, as we're talking about this helps you guys with the operation and the running of the school district. And then we need to kind of figure out how do we, how can we get better funding for a district? And, because that would just create a bigger problem. If we're still, the funding formula is still here and we get rid of the cap and your operational up here, it still goes to them and then they're gonna come screaming at everyone, meaning the public.
Isn't the task force like years? I mean, didn't we hear about this task force like 3 years ago?
So initially, the task force was S354, 83578. Senator Greenstein, go ahead.
Let me just say this. The cap issue, it seems that, there are a couple of bills that would allow you to vote more often. You asked us about one, which was a Senator Beach bill. I don't remember the number, 25 something.
Mhm.
And then, there's also Senator Sarlo's bill, which is similar. It's better for you, I think. It gives you flexibility. It's S 2837. And that bill authorizes school districts to submit separate proposals for additional spending. But the issue is, it all has to be voted on. Now, there was a bill a couple of years ago when Senator Sweeney was Senate President. He had a bill that would say, you don't have to vote on the cap, you can get rid of the cap. The governor vetoed it. It actually went through the legislature and the governor vetoed it. And I was told just recently, the governor wants to keep the cap, because when you want to keep spending down, you want a cap. So he's really the one that wants it. The legislature was willing to get rid of it, and it seemed like he didn't want to get rid of it. Whether things have changed, I don't know. But at least the Sarlo bill that's sitting on his desk, waiting for him to sign, it would give you some flexibility when you could take the vote, so that it would work better for you. But the last thing I want to ask is, didn't you recently have a vote? We
Yes.
Put it out to your
Yes,
citizens.
and we were very fortunate that our citizens,
I mean, that was.
but it's $100,000 cost to the district. So we need money for our children, but we're asking the district, which are our taxpayers, to
Right.
spend the money. So that's another problem. So if we are above what we need and we don't want to cut programs or cut staff, we were very fortunate that we said to our citizens, help us.
It was
And,
great that they did it.
And it was fantastic because we heard their voice, their vote is their voice. But we want to be cognizant of how, we can't do that every year to our citizens. How do we do that? And it is a cost that becomes part of our budget cost. And it was approximately $187,000.
Mr. Queen, I know you want
I
to
just-
share
I
something.
have some comments. Happened to be in CVS last year and a little boy is talking to his mother. And I said, oh, are you off from school today? And the mother said, no, I live in Monroe. We don't have full day kindergarten. And I mean, I was shocked. That's when I first got on the board, because if I have children that have small children, if they didn't have full day pre-K and kindergarten, grandma would be watching them. And I told them that when I retired, I wasn't watching any of their children, unless it was necessary for them to go to their job that day. But where they live in Howell and East Brunswick,
They have it.
they have it. So that was one comment, and it shocked me because those lower grades are just the beginning of that child's education. With wonderful teachers that we have in this state, to give them the opportunity to come here to Monroe when we get our full day kindergarten and teach the wonderful children that we have here. Another thing was that we have, I think it's over 50% senior population in Monroe. But we also have a high percentage of new developments that have been put in here in the last 5 or 10 years. And they're all young couples. And I know from my own family too, they both, husband and wife, and I have a daughter that's a single mom, have to work. So, I mean, they could be cutting corners. We don't know that. We don't want to do that to their children's education or their income. They want to stay here. But we have to take care of their children's education through a board of education, through you, for the state to understand what the situations are here. I was on a board years ago in another district, and I remember when the impact fees were around. And you could say to them, well, yeah, you can have this piece of property, but you need to put a school there for us.
Mhm.
And then I think 10 or 15 years ago, that was gone. I mean, that was fantastic because there was something built where I lived before. And it's huge. It never developed, and they said not many children were gonna be in there. But come to find out, all those children would be putting into to the district. So that's a lot of things that we have to consider is all populations in this town. And the younger people. I mean, I live with it, with my grandchildren. My daughter's off, she teaches in New Brunswick. East Brunswick's off, New Brunswick's not. I have my grandson for an entire week, and boy, tell me, I love it. I love having him. He makes me feel young, but something's not right here for us. We really need to step up, and everybody in legislators to step up and try to help Monroe get that pre-K and the kindergarten in here and give them that boost for a great start of a good education. So that was just my comments.
No, I was gonna say, I always say, your kids aren't necessarily just competing with the kids next door, they're competing with kids all around the world.
Exactly.
So, it is really important to kind of establish that academic performance very early
Yes.
for our.
We have to.
So, and I know Wayne has a question. I know we're running out of time. I do want to be able to also talk about transportation.
Okay, I did just want,
Well, go ahead.
go ahead.
So just, real quick, to touch on your impact piece, listen, it's not just here, right? In our district, we have, it's well before the elected officials that were in there,
Right.
in the town of Robbinsville, right? They built the town center, high-density housing, right? And you have a lot of people and they did it and everyone said the tight community and high-density housing is good, easier for the infrastructure, everything's right there. But the magnitude of children that have come into that school district with 3 schools, they're similar questions and similar concerns that you guys have here on how do we better aid, these type of communities. And I think by considering strongly the impact fees would help out as, like, you see the new houses, I mean, driving through here, you see developments popping up. It's not just the larger homes on a larger acreage, it's the high density stuff that impacts everything tremendously. What ballpark, your per student cost?
And we have it.
Like, what's it cost for,
So it's,
or your budget divided by?
$15,000,
15,000.
14,000 high change, so 15,000.
Okay, so that's, to be honest with you, I mean, looking at what, I see the other numbers, the average is around 18,000 a kid. So you guys are well under, from what I've been told on what the state average is, on educating kids. And I'll just kind of leave it with this, we're frustrated too, right? So don't think that, it's falling on deaf ears, because it's not. We border the city of Trenton, our district, and, listen, a similar sized school district's right next door to it. And the city of Trenton receives foreign state aid and the entire budget of Hamilton, right? So feel the frustration,
Yes.
right? And it's something, sometimes you beat yourself on the head a little bit, but we gotta figure out ways, and I believe that, the task force and, discussion, whether it's partial removal of the cap.
I was gonna say, maybe we could just add to it instead of it being 2%.
Right.
It's a little
If
bit
we could figure out, I think we need the discussion, if we're hitting roadblocks with removal of this cap, which I
Raise it.
believe we're going to, and, for the residents, New Jersey is one of 2 states where the governor has the super veto power, and it's happened to us. So, you shake your head sometimes when you get the legislature on board with something, and then, that you get that big no vote on the
Just-
signature. So, we hear you.
I wanted to go back really quick to S2837 and what was discussed about
Which one's
the
that?
election. So that is a bill, I'm starting with, right, so we have the Assembly Bill 2784. In the Senate, it is S2548. I believe it's actually already been passed by the Assembly.
That has passed
And it's-
the assembly overwhelmingly. I
Right.
think only one person abstained, no one voted no.
And it, I think it's already been heard on the floor in the Senate, but it has not had a vote as of yet.
Correct.
This is, I just wanted to share for our public, this is in order to have a vote on going above cap in November, because right now, the way it works is if you have a vote in November, you can only use it for that current year. So you would have to start your year without those programs. And if it passes, then you can add them back. What this would allow us to do would be to have a vote in November, so there's still no additional cost of an election,
Correct.
which is what Bill's like, S 2837, to have it at other times, you know, to
Isn't
submit the
that better?
proposals, it would still have that cost. But ideally, with this bill, 2784 and then S 2548, that would allow us to ask our taxpayers without an additional cost of an election,
Yep.
if they would want to go above cost for the future year, so we could plan ahead instead of going retroactively.
I guess I don't understand, I guess I didn't understand that. You're saying that the one you asked us about, you're saying would allow you to go and go without the cap? You just have to ask?
Well, so S 2548, which is the one that, that was on here, that would allow us to essentially do what we did in asking our taxpayers to go above the cap. They would be paying the additional cost. Ideally, if we fix the formula, we don't have to do that anyway, but, it would allow us to go above the cap for the following school year. So if we said, hey, we would like to provide these additional programs, or we would like to make sure we don't cut certain programs.
We're not gonna do that one in the Senate, at least as of now. We're gonna do 2837, or it's on the governor's desk. waiting
Okay.
to be signed,
Because-
and they're very similar, but it seems to me 2837 gives you more flexibility, because
It-
there are a whole bunch of.
That's the one where we enter the individual needs, that's the one where we
So
go ahead and ask for extra
2337
funds.
is for
I just don't
having
see that.
elections
I don't.
to go above the cap on other alternative dates. But the problem with
No,
that
still
bill
costs
is
money.
any
Yeah.
bill that doesn't allow us to have that vote in November costs the district money to have. So having special elections costs approximately
About
$100,000.
Yes, about $100,000.
So that's what S 2837 would do, whereas 2548, having it on that November gives us a greater voter presence and also doesn't cost us anything else.
Right, so if you have an urgent funding need, it allows for you to cover that.
Right. Assemblywoman McCoy, I know you wanted to just touch on transportation really quick, so.
Yes, assuming that you're having some urgent needs as far as recruitment and returning the drivers. So I just wanted to hear a little bit more from all of you in regards to that.
So we had a bus driver shortage, which was at its worst, I'd say, in the earlier part of the year. I just signed 3 bus drivers to be officially hired. And what's happening is, we don't have people coming out to be bus drivers. And the bus drivers have the opportunity, similar to teachers, that competitive pricing, and they go other places. I mean, we do pay fairly well as far as a bus driver is concerned, but you just don't have the amount of people coming out to be a bus driver. So with the shortage, it causes a problem. And we have double runs here, which really affects our children and affects our parents. They have to get to work, their children can't leave the house, and then children go to school late, which affects their education. And it's just a whole nasty cycle now.
We ended up with students late every day.
Are we using a transportation agency or anything?
So the way it works is we were very proud that we were able to bring all of our buses back in what we call in-house over the last 4 years, approximately 3 to 4 years. And what that meant was we weren't contracting out. We now contract out, off the top of my head, I want to say we contract out 7, not mistaken. I think 7 is the correct number. What happens with the contract buses is we don't have control. They don't work for us. It's a third party. So our coordinators and supervisors then have to reach out to those supervisor coordinators who then have to reach out to those bus drivers. And we don't have that immediate control. We want our children to be on our buses. We want our children just like we want them in our schools. So of course we contract out, we try and keep it at the high school level because those children are, I won't say they're all grown, but they're as close to grown in comparisons. But what's happening is the reality, right now we have 11 scheduled out of district bus utilization for the fall, which could change. And absolutely our elementary children will be on those buses. So contact is a real problem. It's a real problem. And, we're very concerned. We want our babies to be able to be on buses where I can literally pick up my radio and I could actually call that bus and say, I'm looking for, Joey Smith on the bus. I mean, there's a lot to be said. People move to this people move to Monroe because of the quality of who we are, because of the way we do things. I was very small school. Applegarth School was a seventh and eighth grade. I was the vice principal back there in 2003. We had 550 kids. By the time I left, we had 900 children with more trailers than school. And what does that mean? That's a positive. People move here because we do a good job. And if we have to worry about this third efficient education and we have to lessen the quality because we don't have the money, it affects our kids. If it affects our kids, it affects our parents. If it affects our parents, it affects our community. When it affects our community, it affects everybody's pocket. Because that's why our houses are worth so much. So, we would love if somebody would just raise the 2% or, you know, we don't have to get rid of the cap completely, but we will take some extra money. And the other thing is that if, now that we hear that it's not gonna go forward, that is a little disheartening because I know, and I wanna, you know, compliment Kate because she's been talking about it a lot. If we could have had it where we could know that we could have our parents vote on it and not worry about not being able to put the programs in effect and costing nothing. You vote yes or you vote no, your voice is your vote. That would be great. That would be, because that's really important to us.
They were very similar,
Right.
and there's one that was going forward, but maybe they're not so similar, so.
It's the same
yeah.
result, but different ways of getting
Getting
about it, and that's the difference. But we can definitely, get together to explain that a little bit further.
Just to touch on the busing, it's not just, the busing, we're trying to retain, employees, it's not just, it's educators. We're seeing, it's, you know, we're having, discussions with, nursing staff, safe staffing, in the facilities. We're having, needs for utility workers, where we don't have enough, we have needs for construction workers, right? So we're seeing this, and I'm seeing the, you know, I drive by it every day on my way to work normally, and it's, you know, I saw the past 20 years, hey, you know, school buses needed $15. School buses need, the drivers needed, you know, 20, 25, now we're up to $35 an hour for a school bus driver. And, you know, they're still having difficulty getting, you know, that's a grander problem, but still same part of the same problem that you have here on how do we retain employees and what do we need to do? You know, from an educator, I'm gonna leave here and I'm gonna go to, you know, a district that, you know, I'm gonna gain $20,000 a year in my salary. I understand it.
Right, and I think we all understand that as legislators, you have all of these different things to look at. You are not solely focused on education, and, you know, I think that's one of the things that we were really excited about having you here today is because our job, you know, both our professionals as well as our Board of Education is to, you know, advocate and to make sure that we are highlighting what our challenges are and what we can do to help find solutions. So, you know, I think that's a great way to sort of wrap it up. Like, if there's anything that you feel we can do to help with some of these problems we've presented, I think, you know, we're certainly all willing to send information to you. That, you know, I love that we were able to have this meeting and have, you know, future meetings as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come and meet with us today. We, on behalf of everybody sitting up here, we do really appreciate it. I think it was a wonderful conversation. And I'm hopeful that we can continue the conversation now that our dialogue has begun. Certainly, we have more ideas and thoughts that we would like to share with you. And also thank you for 300,000. That was unexpected. So we are very appreciative, again, of anything, any help that we can get. We know that creating the budget is a difficult task and there's a lot of financial constraints, especially given where we are now, so.
But I have one additional ask, I don't know if it's possible. So I had my grant, supervisor of grants, is a grant writer, who's also a director of human resources. I had her reach out to the state. She went online, she makes some phone calls. I don't even know if this is doable, but since there's so much money, from what I'm hearing, for pre-K, maybe they could allow some of that money to be the kindergarten, because if there's only us and Millstone,
Right, there's 8 in the whole
and
state.
that's 2 for us local.
Right,
So
or
our
you
local.
can just open the application.
If they
so
could open up the application, and if you could prove, and we could do, we will jump through every hoop and cross our T's, dot our I's, but if they could turn around and allow that money, because she looked at me and said, Sherry, no.
Right.
You know, like, no, it's pre-K, it's pre-K, it's pre-K. You have to have a full day kindergarten. So I'm just saying, just sitting here, I don't know if it'll fall on deaf ears, but if you don't ask, you don't get. There's any way that certain districts that do not have full day kindergarten that could apply for that grant money that's being utilized for pre-K. That means the holidays would come early for us.
There's always something that we can change, right? So
I thought I'd ask.
I think that some of the things, but what helps us when we're trying to change something is that we're saying, hey, listen, we're funding with this grant pre-K here. And now they're gonna go pre-K, now they're gonna hit the wall the next year. So maybe there's something we can morph.
I'd appreciate it.
Partnership, but then that doesn't necessarily solve the funding problem. As we're looking at, you don't have the physical space. Right, so,
Well, we don't have the physical space, but with money, we can make things happen. So if the money was available, we would do what we need to do. We're saying, we thank you for the 300, but we really, we need way more money than that. But the grants that are out there, from what I was told by, Ms. Christie, who went ahead and did the exploration, there's a lot of money.
Yes.
And there's a lot of money available, but it's not available to us
Right.
because we don't fit the
Actually,
bill.
I looked at the amount of, because that's in addition to the state aid, the preschool
Yes.
money.
How much money did this
Brunswick, it's about $6 million a
Okay,
year.
we'll make it
On
work.
South Brunswick, I think was about $4 million per year,
We'll
just
keep
for
them.
preschool, like in addition to what they're getting here. So
You're right.
absolutely, I think there's the initial cost of making our facilities what they need to be.
But we can think out of the box too, and if we need to be
Right.
district and need to do what we
Um,
need to do, it's
and
just
then
that
there's that
we're not even close at this juncture. So I appreciate that. Thank you. I
No,
think just.
No, we're all ears.
Right.
I wanted to say, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I want to just throw in one thing, but not start another discussion on it. It'll take us another 20 minutes. But I just wanted to say, one of the topics we didn't mention was the extraordinary special ed. You have a nice amount, but if we could do there are bills in to try to increase the amount, so that would be another area.
Ms. Allen, is that what we had just
Yes,
gotten?
yes, that would be great if that could be, if it was fully funded or if the transportation for that.
Yep.
What we've had, what we've
Would
had.
also be included, or even if those amounts could be taken outside of the cap. But those amounts are huge for us. We pay a lot of money, some of the students up to $200,000 student.
A student for transportation for out of district placement.
We'll find out.
Right, I think the aid covered like 1/3
Third.
of the cost of that.
And the same with the transportation in general, what we pay for transportation, $10 million.
One of the things that could be useful is summarizing today's meeting. To get us something in writing. These are some of the things.
Mr. Monroe is already on it.
Does anyone else have anything else they wanted to add?
And I also would just say, if there are other costs that could come outside of the cap, that could be moved, the capital outlay, the PERS assessment every year, which is $2.5 million for us. Fuel costs, some of the costs that are just rising so much so quickly, if they could be removed, taken outside of the cap, so that we could fit everything we really need into the cap. That would be that'd be helpful.
Just a creative way of not raising the cap, but making it so that we can afford it.
Yes.
some of these specific things outside of the cap.
That's a very good point.
This is, thank you guys, really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for
I'm
coming.
glad
Yes.
you're here on today, we really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad. Thank you to everyone who was here for coming today and for providing input to some of the conversations that we had up there as well.
Closing, just something outside of our educational talks on how sometimes, small.
Hold on.
So it hasn't been about, 15 years ago, I went to pass someone to look at an old antiquated bill here, right? The bill from 1935, 1937.
Apple up is open.
Right, and it was, you can't sell a car in New Jersey on Sunday, it's illegal, right, illegal. So, trying to create some economic, development going on and, okay, let's just get rid of that where you can sell the car on Sunday, because the fine was, $100.
Right.
Big deal, and mandatory 10 days in jail,
Oh,
Wow.
right? So we get rid of this. You think it would be easy? You don't have to open. You can do what they want. You can bank on Sunday, bank if you're not to open. You would think that I was the, till of the hunt. Big car dealers like, what are you doing? What are you doing? We don't want. So, but it's simple things sometimes that they not sensible.
Yeah.
And difficult things are not as difficult as.
Yeah. Sure.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, here guys, thank you. Did you want to do that?
Yes.